Welcome back to Another World Audiobooks. Thank you guys for tuning in. We are cruising right along through this travel around the world, and hope you're enjoying the journey so far. I know I am. This has been a fun book so far, and I'm really looking forward to continuing on through it. So thank you guys for listening and supporting the show. Thank you to our awesome patrons who make this show possible. If you are a patron, thank you. Thank you. If you're not a patron, you should check it out. There are some awesome perks to signing up to be a patron. I try to make it worth your while. You get lots of free audiobooks, lots of other free stuff. There are tiers of the patronage where you actually get free merchandise as well from the Another World Audiobooks store. So go ahead and check that out. Again, that's anotherworldaudiobooks.com. And just click on patron perks. I want to be bringing you longer episodes. I know, especially with this type of a book where it's very episodic, sometimes the chapters just fly by and feels like you don't actually get much of an episode, which I hate that feeling. And I want to be able to bring you longer episodes, but I need your help in order to make that happen. So if you want to sign up to be a patron and help make that happen, that would be amazing. And if you can't do that, just spread the word. Tell more people about the podcast, because just by the law of averages, if we have more people listening, then we'll end up with more patrons, probably. I think that's how it works anyway. Stick around till the end of the episode. I actually have some really cool facts. I was doing some research on the Reform Club, which is Phileas Fogg's little club that he's belonging to there, and I was curious like what that was and how that all works and stuff, so I looked it up, and we'll also have some vocabulary words at the end of the episode as well. So stay tuned for that, and without further ado, let's jump into the next 3 chapters of Around the World in 80 Days. Chapter 5, in which a new species of funds, unknown to the moneyed men, appears on 'Change. Phileas Fogg rightly suspected that his departure from London would create a lively sensation at the West End. The news of the bet spread through the Reform Club and afforded an exciting topic of conversation to its members. From the club, it soon got into the papers throughout England. The boasted tour of the world was talked about, disputed, argued with as much warmth as if the subject were another Alabama claim. Some took sides with Phileas Fogg, but the large majority shook their heads and declared against him. It was absurd, impossible, they declared, that the tour of the world could be made, except theoretically and on paper, in this minimum of time, and with the existing means of travelling. The Times, Standard, Morning Post, and Daily News, and 20 other highly respectable newspapers scouted Mr. Fogg's project as madness. The Daily Telegraph alone hesitatingly supported him. People in general thought him a lunatic, and blamed his Reform Club friends for having accepted a wager which betrayed the mental aberration of its proposer. Articles no less passionate than logical appeared on the question, for geography is one of the pet subjects of the English, and the columns devoted to Phileas Fogg's venture were eagerly devoured by all classes of readers. At first, some rash individuals, principally of the gentler sex, espoused his cause, which became still more popular when the Illustrated London News came out with his portrait, copied from a photograph in the Reform Club. A few readers of the Daily Telegraph even dared to say, "Why not? After all, stranger things have come to pass." At last, a long article appeared, on the 7th of October, in the Bulletin of the Royal Geographical Society, which treated the question from every point of view, and demonstrated the utter folly of the enterprise. Everything, it said, was against the travellers, every obstacle imposed alike by man and by nature. A miraculous agreement of the times of departure and arrival, which was impossible, was absolutely necessary to his success. He might perhaps reckon on the arrival of trains at the designated hours in Europe, where the distances were relatively moderate, but when he calculated upon crossing India in 3 days and the United States in 7, could he rely beyond misgiving upon accomplishing his task? There were accidents to machinery, the liability of trains to run off the line, collisions, bad weather, the blocking up by snow. Were not all these against Phileas Fogg? Would he not find himself, when travelling by steamer in winter, at the mercy of the winds and fogs? Is it uncommon for the best ocean steamers to be 2 or 3 days behind time? But a single delay would suffice to fatally break the chain of communication. Should Phileas Fogg once miss, even by an hour, a steamer, he would have to wait for the next, and that would irrevocably render his attempt vain. This article made a great deal of noise, and, being copied into all the papers, seriously depressed the advocates of the rash tourist. Everybody knows that England is the world of betting men, who are of a higher class than mere gamblers. To bet is in the English temperament. Not only the members of the Reform, but the general public made heavy wagers for or against Phileas Fogg, who was set down in the betting books as if he were a racehorse. Bonds were issued and made their appearance on 'Change. Phileas Fogg bonds were offered at par or at a premium, and a great business was done in them. But 5 days after the article in the Bulletin of the Geographical Society appeared, the demand began to subside. Phileas Fogg declined. They were offered by packages, at first of 5, then of 10, until at last nobody would take less than 20, 50, 100. Lord Albemarle, an elderly, paralytic gentleman, was now the only advocate of Phileas Fogg left. This noble lord, who was fastened to his chair, would have given his fortune to be able to make the tour of the world if it took 10 years. And he bet £5,000 on Phileas Fogg. When the folly, as well as the uselessness of the adventure was pointed out to him, he contented himself with replying, "If the thing is feasible, the first to do it ought to be an Englishman." The Fogg party dwindled more and more. Everybody was going against him, and the bets stood 150 and 200 to 1. And a week after his departure, an incident occurred which deprived him of backers at any price. The Commissioner of Police was sitting in his office at 9 o'clock one evening when the following telegraphic dispatch was put in his hands. Suez to London. Rowan, Commissioner of Police, Scotland Yard. I've found the bank robber, Phileas Fogg. Send without delay warrant of arrest to Bombay. Fix, Detective. The effect of this dispatch was instantaneous. The polished gentleman disappeared to give place to the bank robber. His photograph, which was hung with those of the rest of the members at the Reform Club, was minutely examined, and it betrayed, feature by feature, the description of the robber which had been provided to the police. The mysterious habits of Phileas Fogg were recalled, his solitary ways, his sudden departure, and it seemed clear that, in undertaking a tour round the world on the pretext of a wager, he had had no other end in view than to elude the detectives and throw them off his track. Chapter 6, in which Fix, the detective, betrays a very natural impatience. The circumstances under which this telegraphic dispatch about Phileas Fogg was sent were as follows. The steamer Mongolia, belonging to the Peninsular and Oriental Company, built of iron and of 2,800 tons burden and 500 horsepower, was due at 11 o'clock a.m. on Wednesday, the 9th of October, at Suez. The Mongolia plied regularly between Brindisi and Bombay via the Suez Canal, and was one of the fastest steamers belonging to the company, always making more than 10 knots an hour between Brindisi and Suez, and 9.5 between Suez and Bombay. 2 men were promenading up and down the wharves among the crowd of natives and strangers who were sojourning at this once straggling village, now, thanks to the enterprise of Mr. Lesseps, a fast-growing town. One was the British consul at Suez, who, despite the prophecies of the English government and the unfavourable predictions of Stevenson, was in the habit of seeing, from his office window, English ships daily passing to and fro on the Great Canal, by which the old roundabout route from England to India by the Cape of Good Hope was abridged by at least a half. The other was a small, slight-built personage with a nervous, intelligent face, and bright eyes peering out from under eyebrows which he was incessantly twitching. He was just now manifesting unmistakable signs of impatience, nervously pacing up and down, and unable to stand still for a moment. This was Fix, one of the detectives who had been dispatched from England in search of the bank robber. It was his task to narrowly watch every passenger who arrived at Suez, and to follow up all who seemed to be suspicious characters, or bore a resemblance to the description of the criminal which he had received 2 days before from the police headquarters at London. The detective was evidently inspired by the hope of obtaining the splendid reward which would be the prize of success, and awaited with a feverish impatience easy to understand the arrival of the steamer Magnolia. "So you say, Consul," asked he for the 20th time, "that this steamer is never behind time?" "No, Mr. Fix," replied the Consul. She was bespoken yesterday at Port Said, and the rest of the way is of no account to such a craft. I repeat that the Mongolia has been in advance of the time required by the company's regulations, and gained the prize awarded for excess of speed."
"Does she come directly from Brindisi?"
"Directly from Brindisi. She takes on the Indian mails there, and she left there Saturday at 5 p.m. Have patience, Mr. Fix. She will not be late, but really I don't see how, from the description you have, you will be able to recognize your man, even if he is on board the Mongolia."
"A man rather feels the presence of these fellows, Consul, than recognizes them. You must have a scent for them, and a scent is like a sixth sense which combines hearing, seeing, and smelling. I've arrested more than one of these gentlemen in my time, and if my thief is on board, I'll answer for it. He'll not slip through my fingers."
"I hope so, Mr. Fix, for it was a heavy robbery."
"A magnificent robbery, Consul. £55,000. We don't often have such windfalls. Burglars are getting to be so contemptible nowadays. A fellow gets hung for a handful of shillings."
"Mr. Fix," said the consul, "I like your way of talking, and hope you'll succeed, but I fear you will find it far from easy. Don't you see, the description which you have there has a singular resemblance to an honest man?"
"Consul," remarked the detective dogmatically, "great robbers always resemble honest folks. Fellows who have rascally faces have only one course to take, and that is to remain honest. Otherwise they would be arrested offhand. The artistic thing is to unmask honest countenances. It's no light task, I admit, but a real art."
Mr. Fix evidently was not wanting in a tinge of self-conceit. Little by little, the scene on the quay became more animated. Sailors of various nations, merchants, shipbrokers, porters, fellers, bustled to and fro as if the steamer were immediately expected. The weather was clear and slightly chilly. The minarets of the town loomed above the houses in the pale rays of the sun. A jetty pier, some 2,000 yards long, extended into the roadstead. A number of fishing smacks and coasting boats, some retaining the fantastic fashion of ancient galleys, were discernible on the Red Sea. As he passed among the busy crowd, Fix, according to habit, scrutinized the passers-by with a keen, rapid glance. It was now 10:30.
"The steamer doesn't come,"
he exclaimed as the port clock struck. "She can't be far off now," returned his companion.
"How long will she stop at Suez?"
4 hours, long enough to get in her coal. It is 1,310 miles from Suez to Aden at the other end of the Red Sea, and she has to take in a fresh coal supply."
"And does she go from Suez directly to Bombay?"
"Without putting in anywhere."
"Good," said Fix. "If the robber is on board, he will no doubt get off at Suez, so as to reach the Dutch or French colonies in Asia by some other route. He ought to know that he would not be safe an hour in India, which is English soil."
"Unless," objected the consul, "he is exceptionally shrewd. An English criminal, you know, is always better concealed in London than anywhere else." This observation furnished the detective food for thought, and meanwhile the consul went away to his office. Fix, left alone, was more impatient than ever, having a presentiment that the robber was on board the Mongolia. If he had indeed left London intending to reach the New World, he would naturally take the route via India, which was less watched and more difficult to watch than that of the Atlantic. But Fix's reflections were soon interrupted by a succession of sharp whistles, which announced the arrival of the Mongolia. The porters and fellers rushed down the quay, and a dozen boats pushed off from the shore to go and meet the steamer. Soon her gigantic hull appeared passing along between the banks, and 11 o'clock struck as she anchored in the road. She brought an unusual number of passengers, some of whom remained on deck to scan the picturesque panorama of the town, while the greater part disembarked in the boats and landed on the quay. Fix took up a position and carefully examined each face and figure which made its appearance. Presently, one of the passengers, after vigorously pushing his way through the importunate crowd of porters, came up to him and politely asked if he could point out the English consulate, at the same time showing a passport which he wished to have visaed. Fix instinctively took the passport, and with a rapid glance read the description of its bearer. An involuntary motion of surprise nearly escaped him, for the description in the passport was identical with that of the bank robber which he had received from Scotland Yard.
"Is this your passport?"
asked he.
"No, it's my master's." "And your master is?"
"He stayed on board."
"But he must go to the consuls in person, so as to establish his identity."
"Oh, is that necessary?"
"Quite indispensable."
"And where is the consulate?"
"There, on the corner of the square,"
said Fix, pointing to a house 200 steps off.
"I'll go and fetch my master, who won't be much pleased, however, to be disturbed."
The passenger bowed to Fix and returned to the steamer. Chapter 7, which once more demonstrates the uselessness of passports as aids to detectives. The detective passed down the quay and rapidly made his way to the consul's office, where he was at once admitted to the presence of that official.
"Consul,"
said he without preamble,
"I have strong reasons for believing that my man is a passenger on the Mongolia."
And he narrated what had just passed concerning the passport.
"Well, Mr. Fix,"
replied the consul,
"I will not be sorry to see the rascal's face, but perhaps he won't come here. That is, if he is the person you suppose him to be. A robber doesn't quite like to leave traces of his flight behind him, and besides, he is not obliged to have his passport countersigned."
"If he is as shrewd as I think he is, consul, he will come."
"To have his passport visaed?"
"Yes. Passports are only good for annoying honest folks and aiding in the flight of rogues. I assure you, it will be quite the thing for him to do. But I hope you will not visa the passport."
"Why not? If the passport is genuine, I have no right to refuse."
"Still, I must keep this man here until I can get a warrant to arrest him from London."
That's your lookout, but I cannot—"
The consul did not finish his sentence, for as he spoke a knock was heard at the door, and 2 strangers entered, one of whom was the servant whom Fix had met on the quay. The other, who was his master, held out his passport with the request that the consul would do him the favour to visa it. The consul took the document and carefully read it, whilst Fix observed, or rather devoured, the stranger with his eyes from a corner of the room.
"You are Mr. Phileas Fogg?"
said the consul after reading the passport. "I am."
"And this man is your servant?"
"He is, a Frenchman, named Passepartout."
"You are from London?"
"Yes."
"And you are going—"
"To Bombay."
"Very good, sir. You know that a visa is useless, and that no passport is required."
"I know it, sir," replied Phileas Fogg, "but I wish to prove, by your visa, that I came by Suez."
"Very well, sir."
The consul proceeded to sign and date the passport, after which he added his official seal. Mr. Fogg paid the customary fee, coldly bowed, and went out, followed by his servant.
"Well?"
queried the detective.
"Well, he looks and acts like a perfectly honest man,"
replied the consul.
"Possibly, but that is not the question. Do you think, consul, that this phlegmatic gentleman resembles, feature by feature, the robber whose description I have received?"
"I concede that, but then, you know, all descriptions—"
"I'll make certain of it,"
interrupted Fix.
"The servant seems to me less mysterious than the master. Besides, he's a Frenchman, and can't help talking. Excuse me for a little while, consul."
Fix started off in search of Passepartout. Meanwhile, Mr. Fogg, after leaving the consulate, repaired to the quay, gave some orders to Passepartout, went off to the Mongolia in a boat, and descended to his cabin. He took up his notebook, which contained the following memoranda. Left London, Wednesday, October 2nd, at 8:45 p.m. Reached Paris, Thursday, October 3rd, at 7:20 a.m. Left Paris, Thursday, at 8:40 a.m. Reached Turin by Mont-Cenis, Friday, October 4th, at 6:35 a.m. Left Turin, Friday, at 7:20 a.m. Arrived at Brindisi, Saturday, October 5th, at 4 p.m. Sailed on the Mongolia, Saturday, at 5 p.m. Reached Suez, Wednesday, October 9th, at 11 a.m. Total of hours spent, 158.5, or in days, 6 days and a half. These dates were inscribed in an itinerary divided into columns, indicating the month, the day of the month, and the day of the stipulated and actual arrivals at each principal point: Paris, Brindisi, Suez, Bombay, Calcutta, Singapore, Hong Kong, Yokohama, San Francisco, New York, and London. From the 2nd of October to the 21st of December, and giving a space for setting down the gain made or the loss suffered on arrival at each locality. This methodical record thus contained an account of everything needed, and Mr. Fogg always knew whether he was behindhand or in advance of his time. On this Friday, October 9th, he noted his arrival at Suez, and observed that he had as yet neither gained nor lost. He sat down quietly to breakfast in his cabin, never once thinking of inspecting the town, being one of those Englishmen who are wont to see foreign countries through the eyes of their domestics. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed that. We're getting introduced to the other main character there, Detective Fix. I think he'll be a fun one to follow along as well. A few words that came up here. Importunate. Sounds pretty familiar. We may have actually done this word before, but I didn't remember it. So, importunate. It sounds like unfortunate, but importunate. It basically means troublesomely urgent or persistent in requesting. So basically, if someone's like yelling at you and you have a child yelling at you and trying to get your attention, it would be an importunate way to talk to someone. The other one was fella. It's spelled F-E-L-L-A-H, and that's not just like a slang term for a dude or a guy. It is actually a word that means a peasant or agricultural laborer in an Arab country, such as Syria or Egypt. So, Suez Canal in Egypt. You got that the fellas that it mentioned in the chapter, or one of the chapters that we did here today. That's basically just someone who's an agricultural laborer. So there you go. And somebody pointed this out. It was in the Meet the Tiger book. The word is spelled Q-U-A-Y. It looks like quay. We are pronouncing it. But I knew that that wasn't correct, so I looked up the pronunciation to make sure that I got it right, and I found one that said K, that you're supposed to pronounce it K, like the letter K. But then somebody pointed out that that's actually not correct, that it should be key. So you got quay, that looks like quay, pronounced like key, but it also, I found another pronunciation that said that it should be K. So I was very, very confused, but I think I can say with certainty that it is key, as in a key that you unlock a door with, but it's spelled like quay. So go figure. That's one of those things about the English language that you just have to shake your head at. Anyway, the Reform Club. So I was just doing some looking around, and they actually are still in operation, which is so cool. You can actually go to their website. I'll put a link in the show notes below, and it's got some pictures of the interior, and it's just unbelievable. Like, just not the type of thing that, at least in rural America, you see every day. It's in Pall Mall, which is a very famous part of London, and it's famous for its grand architecture, and it also has a very strong place in literary history, not only from around the world in 80 days, but some other works as well. And then it's been used in a lot of films. There's a James Bond movie that it's in, as well as Paddington and the 2009 Sherlock Holmes movie. They all use that as a filming location. But yeah, you can still join it as a member. I don't know how much it costs. Probably more than becoming a patron for World Audiobooks, and probably wouldn't be as cool for what you can get for becoming a patron of Audiobooks. But yeah, it's very cool. You should definitely go check out the pictures. Also, it was a second home for Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, so he liked to go there, as well as H.G. Wells and Winston Churchill. So some big names who like to hang out at the Reform Club. So Phileas Fogg's in good company there. So anyway, I just thought that some of that info was interesting. Hope you found it interesting as well. Thank you guys again for listening. Thank you for sharing the podcast. Again, that just makes such a huge, huge difference. So I appreciate everyone.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile, with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.